progression of cause to effect, but actually from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
You're listening to Paranormal UK Radio.
Welcome to Paranormal UK Radio, the flagship show of the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I'm your host, Irene and Mark, and here with me tonight again is Mark Johnson, and I remembered his name.
You did. You know, you paused there for a moment. It gave me a little bit of concern, but now I'm all excited with glee.
Yeah, well, I was winding you up. With the pause, I was winding you up, wasn't I?
It was called a dramatic pause. You know,
yes, it was
keep
a
everybody
pause.
Keep everyone on the edge of their seat.
That's right. Yeah. So you've just returned from Colorado.
Yes, I did. Went out there to visit family and to complete something that has been on hold for a few months, but now I've completed my shamanic practitioner training.
Oh.
And now I can start working with people, doing healings and other things. So I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be an interesting new chapter moving forward in my career.
Yeah, so you're a qualified shamanic
Shamanic
shaman.
practitioner. And just so people who are listening understand, no, I'm not claiming I'm a shaman. No.
No. All right, then.
But I do using shamanic principles for affecting, connecting with higher guides and energies and conducting healings. And it's a really interesting process. And when I first started it, I didn't realize I was going to go all the way with it. I was doing it to give me something to do. I took a couple of classes. Next thing I know, I was taking all the classes and really getting into some deep stuff. And didn't think this would be something that would come up in my life, but it has, and I'm excited, looking forward to moving forward with it.
Yeah, well, I wish you luck.
Why, thank you. So how are things on your neck of the woods, across the pond?
Well, it snowed. That's what I can say. It snowed.
Finally.
Yeah, again. We've just had the mini beast from the east, which was followed along behind the beast from the east.
Ah.
Yes, because we had the beast from the east a couple of weeks ago. Now the mini beast of the east, from the east, or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, it snowed. It lasted one day here in my part of Wales, and it was gone when I got up. Gone completely. So that's that. And of course, we've had.
I've heard you've been having issues with the Russians. Yes. So
yes, we have. Yeah, but really don't want to speak too much about that at the moment.
No. Let's just say it's just my opinion that not everything is as it seems.
No. I shouldn't think it is.
Nope. I think somebody else is kind of involved in that, trying to stir up the shit pot.
Maybe.
Who
knows?
He's an old uncle of mine. Uncle Sam, as it is. Yeah, that's it. Sam.
Yeah. You think so? You really think so?
Yep.
Well, at the moment, nobody really knows what's going on, so it's best not to jump to too many conclusions.
True. Considering, old Vlad, the shirtless one, just got reelected.
Shirtless one. Yeah. I like that.
I'll tell you something. This is one of the things I like about Putin. Put him up against, any of the other world leaders, and the guy is just so studly at his age. The man's man.
What's studly mean?
He's a stud.
Oh, a stud.
Yes.
You mean he's fit?
Yes.
Yeah, he is pretty fit.
Fit and manly.
Yeah. Well, yeah. He's not very tall.
No, he doesn't need to be. The shortest ones are the scrappers.
Are they? Ah, I see. Yeah, well, again, Putin's Putin.
Yep. We'll have to see how all this is going to play out here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We're still having our barrel of laughs over here.
Are you?
Yeah.
Why? What's been happening now?
Well, nothing. What is it now? It's been a year, and they still haven't proved Russian collusion.
Oh.
They're trying, though. They're trying.
Oh, well, they will. They keep on, won't they?
Mm-hmm.
Even if Trump was not president anymore, whether he was voted out, whether he's long gone and off the planet, they're still going to try and prove that there was Russian
No, they won't, because if
taking place.
What they're trying to do is get him out, and if once he's out, it'll all mysteriously go away.
Oh, I don't think so. Oh, no, they're going to still have to tarnish his name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're doing a good job.
They haven't done that already, but still, never mind. Anyway, getting back to what we were doing, or what we should be doing, Spirit Rescue International.
Yes. What about it?
Do you want to speak about it?
Oh, sure. We'll bring it up again.
Yeah.
Spirit Rescue International, for anybody who's listening, is our group. It's a nonprofit group where we assist people anywhere around the world who's dealing with paranormal issues and problems. You can go to our website at www.spiritrescueint.com, INT short for international, spiritrescueint.com. You can fill out a request form to have us give you a call and talk about your experiences, and we will try to help you any way we can, and it is also free of charge. So no strings attached there. We just honestly want to help people who are dealing with death issues, either have them come to a better understanding of what they're dealing with, show it's maybe not so bad, or if there's something there that needs to be moved on, we will try to help it move on and leave them alone.
Yeah, so if you've got any problems, just contact us at Spirit Rescue International, or should I say Mark?
Yes.
At Spirit Rescue International.
Okay.
Also, I want to shout out to Ireland, Belfast and Dublin especially, and Paul O'Brien. Hello, Paul.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for listening.
And Holly. Holly has given up smoking as well, like me, and hopefully the two of us are still going strong. I know I am, so I'm hoping Holly is too. Holly in Canada.
Holly, we've got to keep on this one. She's vaping again, so, it's one step away from going back. We got to make sure she doesn't.
Okay. All right. So Paul and Holly, hiya. Mark?
That's my name.
Mark, we both want to thank Andy Mercer for standing in last week while you were in Colorado. He done a fantastic job.
He did. Andy, you rock. Great station manager. Did a fantastic job taking over for me while I was traveling last week. Everything went off without a hitch, and you're a great man. Thank you very much, Andy, for all your help.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Right, okay, then off we go.
Okay, here we go. Who's our guest for tonight?
It's Peter McCue. Peter McCue, he wrote a book called Paranormal Encounters on British Roads, and I've had a few of them, so I'm looking forward to speaking to him tonight. Hello, Peter.
Hello.
Hiya. Hello, Peter.
You got the title of the book wrong.
Did I?
Yes.
Paranormal Encounters on British Roads.
Encounters on Britain's roads. It's no different.
Oh, yes.
Britain's roads.
Oh, Britain's roads. Okay.
Yes.
All right, then. Sorry. I'm sorry. Paranormal Encounters on Britain's Road, everybody. And you can buy that from Amazon.com and .co.uk. Peter McCue. Right, I think I got that out. I've got that plug out for you, Peter, anyway.
Right, thank you very much.
Well, and we'll be plugging it quite a lot during the show.
Well, then let me ask Peter, tell us a little bit about your background and how you came about to writing this book.
Well, I've been interested in the subject of paranormal and UFOs for many years. A lot of we spend a lot of our lives on the roads, most of us, and inevitably, perhaps because we spend a lot of time on the roads, a lot of people have paranormal experiences on roads. But there may actually be factors about road travel itself which make paranormal experiences more likely to occur on occasions, being lulled into a slightly altered state of consciousness. Well, I've been to the paranormal for many years, and we spend a lot of our time, most of us anyway, on roads, and it's perhaps inevitable that many reported paranormal experiences should occur on roads. But there may also be factors about road travel itself that sometimes makes paranormal experiences occur.
Now, what made you? What did you? I can't talk tonight. What made you start looking into this? I mean, was it just a general fascination with the paranormal? Have you done any investigating yourself?
Yes, I have.
Were you part of a?
Do you mean the road aspect, or paranormal generally? My interest in the paranormal.
Paranormal in general, yes.
No. I've had that interest for many years since I was young. I think when it, to be honest, it's I can't claim it's purely an intellectual. I mean, it would be nice to say that perhaps, but I think it's a fascinating and exciting subject in some ways, and I think the marrying the intellectual curiosity about these phenomena plus the kind of sense that it's actually interesting and exciting to some extent help to create that interest.
Peter, you said something earlier on, I can't remember your exact words now, about maybe it's the journey itself or something that causes these paranormal...
Yeah.
Do you mean the movement of the car, the fact that it's always on majority of them are on long journeys, or what?
Thinking of maybe a slightly altered state of consciousness that people might experience. Let's say you're on a long, relatively monotonous road journey without a great deal of stimulation. You may experience a slight degree of sensory deprivation. Now, that in itself could produce experiences which aren't actually paranormal. On the other hand, that state of consciousness could also be perhaps conducive to a paranormal experience. I think because if you imagine a solitary driver driving along, and then, for example, he suddenly sees appearing in the road in front of his vehicle, hits the brakes, there's no time to avoid a collision if that figure happened to be a physical entity, but there isn't any damage to the car. The driver is shocked. Now, in a case like that, it's a slightly difficult one, because it could be, if that driver were very tired and sleep deprived, one could experience down to a hypnagogic hallucination. On the other hand, one could say, well, if that driver was a little bit tired with a slight degree of sensory deprivation, that could have actually itself, that state of consciousness could be conducive to an unusual experience. However, there are a lot of cases where there are multiple, when. Therefore, I don't, by a long chalk, think that we can dismiss these experiences in purely subjective terms.
Well, one thing that sort of you just mentioned that I find interesting is the fact that what a lot of people don't realize is when you are driving a car, especially if you're driving and you're not in traffic, you can drive for a while, no stops, no distractions. We are entering an altered state of consciousness. It is a hypnotic state. I actually spoke with a professional hypnotherapist once, and he mentioned that, if you could drive a car, you can be hypnotized, for those people who think they can't be hypnotized, because you are actually entering an hypnotic state and that's why it seems like sometimes you're off thinking about other things, your brain is working, and you're not paying 100% attention, yet you'll go around a corner and, your body still reacts to it, you're still driving and you're paying attention. It's so it is a slightly altered state of consciousness, so it wouldn't surprise me if being in that state allowed people to see more things on the road.
And this state, would that work with passengers as well? Because every time I've seen anything, I'm always a passenger because I don't drive a car.
Yes.
But it's always been on long journeys, long tedious journeys, that I've seen stuff or seen strange things on the road. But it's I don't drive. So do I go into this same state of like a daydream or what?
One of the places I mention in the book is West Lancashire. A man called Rob Gandy has collected a number of reports of people having road ghost experiences there, including cases rather similar to an experience of your own, which we'll probably discuss, of people in the car, what can be loosely phantom hitchhiker experiences. Someone's driving in the rear view mirror, they see a figure in the back of the car, and then maybe they look round and there's no one there. Now, this area that he's talking about in West Lancashire, it's the area around Horsall Moss, and it's quite a flat, drab. Well, to be honest, I don't want to be rude in case anyone's living there and takes offence, but it's a drab-looking sort of area, as you might expect from the word moss. I think the land was reclaimed by drainage, farmland, but it's flat, not many trees. And I think it's often misty, or sometimes misty. And you can imagine if you're driving through that sort of relatively featureless scene, maybe with perhaps a little degree of tiredness or something, you could slip into that slightly altered state of consciousness. Whereas if you were driving through the Highlands and you were new to the area particularly, and you were looking at the scenery and impressed by the lochs and the mountains and so on, your arousal might be high, and you might perhaps be less likely to have a unusual experience in those circumstances.
Just to let our listeners know, we were having some Skype issues with Peter on his end. He was breaking up a bit. So we've brought him back in on his cell phone. It seems to sound a lot better. Peter, how do we sound to you?
You sound okay.
Okay, yeah, you're coming in loud and clear. So just a reminder, we were just talking about how driving through this particular area, which is very bland and mundane, could affect your perception. Could you continue with that?
Yes, the point I was making, that if one is driving through a drab area and there isn't a great deal of sensory stimulation, it could lull you into a slightly altered state of consciousness. And there could be two consequences of that. One is that if you're tired, you may simply have a hallucination based on tiredness itself, which wouldn't be necessarily anything paranormal. The other possibility is that if your consciousness is slightly altered, it may lower the threshold for a genuinely paranormal experience.
Now, I know I've driven tired plenty of times and never had a hallucination or anything that I would even equate to being a paranormal experience. So I just wonder how often that would really happen for people, to be that tired that they see something and hallucinate, or are they just reaching a certain level of consciousness that makes them more receptive to seeing these types of events that maybe somebody...
Well, that was the second point I was making. It could be that. One thing about road ghost experiences in general, and it's worth emphasizing, is that many of them are collective. In other words, there's more than one witness, and therefore it's hard to explain those, particularly the collective cases, explain them away in terms of fatigue and hallucinations purely related to fatigue. As for the idea of hallucinations arising from fatigue, I can speak from personal experience. Years ago, I was hitchhiking. I think it was on the A1 road, and I was picked up by a lorry and was driving along. I was sitting in the cab area, and as I was looking at the cat's eyes and the dashes in the middle of the road, I was on the verge of sleep, and they were starting to change into other things. I think this was what would be called hypnagogic imagery, imagery that can come on the boundary of sleep when a person's falling asleep. Another occasion, I was walking in the Grampian Mountains in Scotland. I'd had a very long day's hill walking. I was walking out on a long track. I was tired, and I hadn't actually had much sleep the night before. And as I was walking along in a state of fatigue, I was beginning to sort of, on the edge of hallucinating, I think, seeing rocks, and they were beginning to sort of change into other things momentarily. And I had to sort of struggle to kind of keep myself alert. But I don't think that this is a total explanation by a long chalk. I was just raising this as a possibility that in some cases, if you have a tired driver, maybe a taxi driver, for instance, coming towards the end of his shift, feeling fatigued, it could lower the threshold for that sort of hallucination.
That's always a possibility, because a lot of people who are sensitive to this type of activity, they can see and hear things that other people can't, possibly by having an altered state of consciousness. Now, Irene, I'll look right at you, because
I thought you would.
Yeah, since you get to see things so often, and yet you also do have experiences where you're in an altered state of consciousness.
That's right. Yeah. So what do you want me to say? I'll tell you an experience. You're talking about collective experiences. There was one on the way back from Scotland. I did find out which road it was. It was the B6, just before Birmingham, or around about Birmingham.
M6.
Oh,
the M6.
Sorry,
yeah.
M6. Yeah, motorway again. Boring thing to drive on. But my mother was in the car. And my husband was driving and I was in the passenger seat. Mum was in the back. And my husband noticed in the wing mirror 2 lights, as if a car was tailgating us right up close to us. So he mentioned something. We were both turned around. Mum turned around. I got up on the seat because it was in them days. You didn't have to wear the seatbelt. I got up on the seat and I looked back, and I tell you, I thought this car was going to come inside our car, or whatever it was going to come inside our car. And so I started to panic. Mum started to panic because it was that close to us. And then all of a sudden it just disappeared. And the road for miles behind us, there was nothing on it. No, this was about 3:00 in the morning.
Interestingly, in the book, I mention an experience reported by the author Paul Devereux on the M6 near Birmingham.
That's where this was.
I beg your pardon?
It was near Birmingham.
Yes. Well, he was driving on the road. This was years ago. The road was fairly empty, and he drove into the middle lane to make way for a truck that was coming to join the carriageway. So he was making way so it didn't have to wait. And he idly glanced at this vehicle, and he couldn't see a driver. And he looked more intently and still couldn't see the driver. He went ahead and looked back, and this vehicle wasn't to be seen anywhere. The other thing was that there was no way it could have come off the motorway at that point.
Yeah, that was exactly like us. There was no way it could have come off the motorway. I couldn't actually see the shape of the vehicle. All you could see was these 2 bright lights, like headlights.
Yes.
And
I also mentioned.
Sorry.
I also mentioned in the book an experience that occurred in Yorkshire, North Yorkshire. A woman was driving back from visiting her mother in Morecambe in Lancashire. She was heading to Skipton, and she saw lights behind her vehicle. And then she saw, I think, I'd have to check the book actually just to give you this firmly, but I think if she looked in the mirror, she couldn't see them, when she looked round, she could see the lights, or the other way around. But anyway, a light also came down from above. Possibly a UFO, one could say. And when she got home, well, eventually the light from above blinked out when some oncoming traffic, a vehicle came into view. And when she got home, she discovered that she was later than expected. She'd had a missing time experience. I take it on this case, you're mentioning this incident that you didn't have any missing time.
Well, I don't know. We never thought about time. We just carried on driving. So, I know it was the very early hours of the morning. We were travelling down at night time. And And one other thing I saw on that road as well. You know, you've got the two carriageways. You've got the up and you've got the down.
Yes.
Okay, upside and downside. Well, we were coming down from Scotland and going up on the other side, but coming down it our way, not travelling up, was a hearse, an old hearse, old-fashioned hearse.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was driving the same direction as us, but it should have been driving the other way because, you know, vanished. And that vanished as well. And that was a very, very old vehicle. It was like an old funeral hearse. You know?
Okay.
That's a classic, isn't it?
Yeah.
You wonder if vehicles on the other side had seen it, they would have really been worried seeing it hurtling towards them.
Yeah, so I'm wondering whether it was driving down what would have been an original road in those days before the motorway was actually built.
Yes. That's interesting.
See, Michael,
there've been a lot of I say a lot, but there've been a number of what I call colliding apparition cases in southern Scotland. There are a couple of roads there, the A75 and the B721. These are roads between Gretna and Dumfries. And on these roads, over the years, there have been reports of people driving along and a figure steps out into the road or is in or maybe is seen in the road, and the driver has really no time to stop. And if it had been a flesh and blood person, there would have been a serious collision, and yet there hasn't been. And some of these reports have been collective experiences as well, you know, more than one witness.
Yeah.
There's a very dramatic story from that area that I don't actually think is true. It's in a book called A Gazetteer of Scottish Ghosts by Peter Underwood, the late Peter Underwood. And it concerns two brothers by the surname Ferguson. And one, I think, was a teenager, one was about 20 or something. I'd have to go and check my source for that. But they were driving towards Annan, coming from the Dumfries direction, and they allegedly encountered all sorts of apparitions that seemed to come towards the vehicle, and then when it was they'd be expected to collide with it, they vanished. The vehicle was rocked about, and this went on allegedly for a long time. I think it was something like half an hour. But I don't actually think the story is probably true, or at least I think it's probably grossly exaggerated, if not an invention. Because I was in touch with Underwood, and he said he himself was unhappy, was not entirely happy with the story. He got it from another source. He didn't want me to name the source, but he wasn't entirely satisfied with the story himself. It would have perhaps been helpful if he'd actually said that when he published it. You know, it just said that I haven't been able to confirm the details myself. But anyway, I'm not saying he made it up himself at all. He may have reported it in good faith, but I suspect that the story was an exaggeration. Apparitional experiences are usually much briefer than that, and because this one went on for such a long time, I suspect it's probably not a real case. The other thing is the report doesn't mention they're encountering any other traffic apart from a phantom furniture van at the end of the experience or near the end. And that road is quite a busy road. And admittedly, this happened years ago, 1962, and the road would have been quieter then. And also, admittedly, the alleged experience occurred at night. But I would have imagined that within that sort of period of time, they would have encountered other traffic. So I'm doubtful about the reliability of that story. This is a problem with this area, isn't it? I'm not an ultra skeptic. I believe these things do happen, but there is this sort of mixture of invented stories, exaggerated stories, and erroneous reporting.
Well, it's like the hitchhiker. You've got a hitchhiker story in every country, haven't you?
Yeah, I've got a chapter on phantom hitchhikers in the book. And I have reported some first-hand accounts. And in fact, if you'd had your experience a while back, and if I'd been in touch with you, I'd have asked to include your very interesting one, just Just
well,
for the sake
if you ever do another book, you can have it, Peter. He wasn't actually a hitchhiker. He was a walker.
No, I'm using the term phantom hitchhiker in a broad sense. I think in the literature, this term might be used loosely for any experience in which an apparition appears in a car or vanishes from a car, or is thought not to have perhaps been a physical. Someone gives someone a lift, and then they have reason to suspect that the person wasn't a flesh and blood creature. Not necessarily just very limited to people who are standing by the road with a thumb out. But if I can mention your experience just for the benefit of the listener, and you can fill me in and correct me if I've got it wrong. You were travelling to Scotland, and you had to drive to Bristol Airport early in the morning to get a flight to Scotland.
That's right.
And you and your husband, you were using satellite navigation, but it didn't seem to be working very well, and you were, in a sense, lost in country lanes somewhere near Bristol.
That's
right.
You
saw an elderly man walking, strangely, in the countryside at that time, and you stopped to ask for directions.
About 4 o'clock in the morning.
That's right. And he said it would be easier for me to direct you myself, and he just got into the vehicle without actually being invited in.
Yeah.
And he directed you to the Bristol airport, and when you got there, he vanished. Is that correct?
That's right. He said you can let me out here, and we slowed the car down. He opened the door. We said thank you for showing us the way and everything. Are you sure you're going to be all right? And he said yes, I'll be all right. And he just disappeared. He just went.
Did he
was gone. We didn't even see where he went. And then we looked around for him, and we couldn't see him anywhere.
Did he literally vanish in front of your eyes, or was it the case you turned your...
I don't know. I don't know whether we averted our eyes or what, but he just disappeared.
Yeah.
It was a really weird sensation. So we carried on driving to the short stay car park. You know, we started the car up again, and didn't think no more of it. And until a little bit later on, then we started talking to each other about it and how we felt about it. And then, you know, to realize or to find out that my husband saw him totally different to me. You know, I saw him, Brian saw him wearing glasses. He didn't have any glasses on when I was looking at him. You know? His hair, Brian said, was very, very thick but well kept. He looked like he'd been dragged through a bush backwards. His hair was sticking up everywhere. That's what I saw. Brian said he was wearing, a dark jacket. I saw him in a kind of silvery grey one. We were seeing different things.
Yeah, I know you have discussed in the book. It's just as a sort of a possibility. I'm not saying this is necessarily true. Is that with these apparent apparitional experiences, they may actually, or some of them could actually be memory aberrations, paranormal memory aberrations. Imagine, for instance, that your experience with that man, the elderly man, hadn't actually occurred. But when you reached Bristol Airport, your memories had been edited, and a false memory had been inserted, including this elderly man. In other words, you may have not seen anything, but what had happened, something had manipulated your memory to give you the impression that had happened. The reason I think there's some credibility in the idea of memory editing is the missing time phenomenon that's often reported with UFO close encounters, you know, where someone has a UFO experience, they get home and they discover it's about an hour or so later than they expected, and they're unable to account for that time. That does raise the question that, you know, is something happening to people's memories? And there are two broad possibilities, I suppose, here, assuming these cases are genuine. One is that there's some impersonal process has occurred. Maybe some sort of ambient magnetic field has prevented the brain from laying down a memory trace. The other possibility is that some sort of deliberate manipulation of memory has occurred by some external intelligence. Now, Peter, we were talking to him.
I had asked him what he was doing out that time in the morning, because an elderly man, you want to know, don't you? And he said that he'd like to walk, and that was the best time for him to do it. He'd go out early in the morning and he'd walk about 15 miles.
The point I'm making, though, if this memory alteration occurs, your reporting of that is based on your memory.
Yeah.
In other words, if you experience a very radical and paranormal, I'm not saying this is a normal process, a paranormal memory manipulation, you may truly believe, and you may recall in some detail your conversation with the man, truly believe it occurred. But let's imagine that some force or intelligence is able to manipulate your memory and your husband's to create false memories which are really compelling. In other words, if someone had been filming what had happened to you at that time, the film may have not have shown any of this. No. It could have been that, as I say, you've experienced some sort of memory tampering, as opposed to it being a perceptual experience.
He wasn't a great talker. The majority of the time he was just saying, turn right here, go, you're coming up to such and such a village, you go through that village, and
Tell me something. How long was the journey with him? How long was it, how many miles do you reckon you covered with him?
It more than likely was only about 25 minutes, but it felt longer.
So would that be something like 20 miles or something? Or
yeah, something like that.
It's interesting because if he had been a real man, he had a hell of a long way to walk back, didn't he?
Yeah. That's it. And airports, yourself that airports are usually stuck out in the middle of nowhere, aren't they? And they're not really that close to the towns.
No. Yeah. So if he had been a real man, he would have. It seems he would have had a hell of a journey back, unless he was going to get some transport to take him back to where he was going. But
yeah. No, once he was out the car, that's when I felt that he wasn't real. That there was something different. I felt that he was some sort of being, but he wasn't human.
Yes.
But all the time he was in the car, and I kept turning around talking to him, because he'd say, oh, you've got to turn around, you've got to take this village. And I say, oh, that's a nice village, isn't it? And I'd turn around and speak to him. And he'd just look at me, sort of thing. But he didn't do a lot of talking. He didn't.
No, I've cited in the book a number of these experiences with apparitional passengers, and and several of them, the more credible ones, I think, the passenger didn't say anything. In fact, there's one case from Bedfordshire. A man, I think it was Roy Fulton, picked up a hitchhiker, and the man got into the car. And when Fulton asked where he wanted to go, the man just pointed ahead, didn't actually speak. And for any kind of anxiety Fulton initially had about this odd behavior of not speaking was somewhat allayed by the thought that perhaps this man was deaf and dumb. But then Fulton was driving along and turned round after a little while to offer the man a cigarette and found that he was alone in the car.
Oh my gosh. Mine got out.
Yeah, yours got out. There have been cases also where someone has given a lift to someone, they've got out, and then well, this is really true of your experience, I suppose, then they have reason to doubt whether the person was real. Yeah. There's a case from Bluebell Hill, than one case.
The famous Bluebell Hill.
A man gave Bluebell Hill in Kent, this is, and a man was driving near a road that there was some works going on, and a woman, walked dangerously into the car or something, and the man opened a door intending to remonstrate with this young woman, and she actually got in and asked to be taken, I think it was to Chatham. He was actually going the other way towards Maidstone, but he took her to where she was going. And when she got out, I think he had to reverse around a corner or something to go back. And he looked and he didn't see her. Now, it's possible that she was a flesh and blood person and he just happened to miss her. But it did give him he did subsequently.
There is the ghost of Bluebell Hill. Wasn't she a bride or something? who got killed on the way to her wedding. Was that the one?
There are actually quite a lot of reports of ghostly sightings on Bluebell Hill. Some of them
and UFO as well.
Yeah, but with regard to this story about it being a bride, there was an accident. I think it was 1965, November 19. I'd have to check the book, but and people have speculated that the ghost or one of the ghosts is the bride. However, there are problems with identifying that woman as the source of these apparitional experiences. I've referred to Bluebell Hill in my book, but a really very detailed examination is by a man called Sean Tudor, who just recently published a book called The Ghosts of Bluebell Hill. It's a very thorough book, and I think he's probably the expert on Bluebell Hill, and you'll find lots of cases in there, and he discusses this question of this idea that the ghostly phenomena related to this bride to be, and he identifies problems with that. In other words, it seems doubtful whether the bride is the source of these phenomena.
So it could just be a legend.
Yes.
Well, many of them are legends, aren't they? But even legends start somewhere. That's the way I look at it.
It certainly there have been quite a few reports from Bluebell Hill. They're interesting, the hitchhiking type of ghost.
Yeah.
What I call a colliding apparition, these figures that walk out in front of vehicles, and the driver thinks they've hit the figure and maybe calls the police, and then there's no evidence of a collision, and more passive types of apparition as well. People seeing a figure, but it doesn't actually interact with the driver in the sense of walking out in front of him or asking for a lift or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's talking about ghosts on the roads and everything, not far from me in Pembrokeshire down the road, there's meant to be monks that have been seen on the road or walking the road. I've yet to see them.
It has an interesting history in terms of the paranormal and UFOs. You probably know back in 1977, it became a sort of alleged hotspot.
Yeah, well, I think it still is, because Pembrokeshire's just down the road, and I'm in Carmarthenshire. I'm in the Gwendalet Valley, and it is like UFO highway out there. I'm not kidding you, Peter. A problem with the 1977 incidents was that there were different reports. 3 books actually came out in, I think, the same year, 1979, I think it was, discussing the events there. And they all differed from one another in details, and there was a reason to believe that some of the stories were, grossly exaggerated or distorted. So it's difficult looking at that evidence to know precisely what did occur. I suspect that things did occur, but that some of the reporting of it was exaggerated or hyped or distorted for one reason or another. Well, can I tell you just one other story that happened to me?
Yeah.
I was, a few years ago, I was doing a travel film for, a tourist film for Wales. And I was taken to a place called Stradey Woods. And I was walking along the road, and they were filming. I was walking along the Stradey, but there was a road that goes up through the woods. You can drive a car up it. It is tarmacked road, but very narrow. It's like a lane. And all of a sudden, something went past me, and I felt it was a runner, somebody running. And he went at such a speed, and I could hear the noise of him as he went past. I tell you what, he could have beaten any Olympian runner. But I knew it was a runner, and I could hear the feet, and I could hear the as he went past. Okay, but I couldn't see anything. I found out shortly afterwards that there has been a phantom runner reported on that road.
That's interesting. Where is that again? Sorry, could you
Stradley Woods, Carmarthenshire, Llanelli.
Yes.
Llanelli, near Yeah, in Carmarthenshire. It's Stradley Woods near Llanelli.
How frequently how
Sorry?
frequent are the manifestations? Have you any idea? I mean, is it...
No, I
is it
just
very...
No, I don't know. I just found out afterwards that there had been somebody experienced a runner along there that had, I don't know whether he died or what, but somebody said that it's haunted by somebody that runs the road.
Yes.
So, and it was quite, and I had my experience. I didn't even know that story. It was afterwards that I found this out. And I thought, that must have been what I experienced. Yeah.
Have you been back since?
No. I'm going to go back in the summer because there is a very nice place there. It's called Furness, and it's where they used to make the cannonballs in the near. I can't say the word. Napoleonic Wars. Did I get it right, Mark?
Yes.
I am so proud of you. You actually said it right.
Yeah. And there's a big lake there, and there's a lovely picnic area and everything. And when my grandchildren are down, I'm going to make sure that we're going to have a day out picnicking the old-fashioned way.
Yes.
With no mobile phones, no nothing. No games consoles. They are going to picnic. They're going to play with a ball. Going to play tennis like we did when we were kids.
I had an interesting experience in Wales years ago. It wasn't actually paranormal, but it relates to the paranormal in the sense when we talk about perception and perceptual errors. I was hill walking with my then wife on a ridge in Western Snowdonia. Now, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. It's something like the Nantyee Ridge. It looks like it's spelt Nantile, but I don't think it's pronounced that way. But I'm not very good at Welsh pronunciation. But I was on this ridge, and my wife and I were going along the ridge, and we saw a figure coming towards us some distance away, and it looked like a giant, and it was quite disconcerting. It looked like an oversized person, a giant. So it was disconcerting, but we just sort of waited. And then a man came into view and said hello, and it was completely ordinary size. It was just some feature of the landscape which had given the illusion that this person was much bigger than he really was.
That's strange.
Now, if we'd run away or run off, I could have been telling people to this day that I had an encounter with a giant figure.
How do you know that it wasn't one of these beings? Somebody that
he was very ordinary. I mean, I don't mean it disparagingly, but he was very, he looked very ordinary as he passed us, just another hill walker. Nothing remarkable about him at all. And I suspect it was one of these visual illusions that you can get that, where the features of the environment can give an impression of size that's misleading. I'm not, again, saying that dismisses, many other experiences, but it was just an interesting one that I the person experienced in Wales of misperception, in a sense.
Yeah. So what about you, Mark? Have you had any of these experiences?
No.
No.
No, but I mean, over here in the U.S., of course, there's many different locations that are said to be haunted, different roads. I mean, here in my state, one road gets a lot of hype, Clinton Road. I went about trying to investigate it and see, what if it had any merit, and unfortunately it didn't. The more I researched, the more we found that it was mostly urban legend, whipped up by our state magazine, Weird New Jersey, kids going out there. I really couldn't find any credible stories of anything happening. Now, we had another road not far from where I live in Warren County called Shades of Death Road. Now, that's the real name of the road, Shades of Death. Now, whoever came up with that name is really interesting. They originally the road, which was made by about in the 1700s to 1800s, was named Shades Road because it was very shady because of the overhanging trees. However, the every summer, the ponds and marshes around there would get mosquitoes, and people would start dying off of malaria. And so many people died in that area, they changed the name to Shades of Death Road. At the time, they didn't realize it was the mosquitoes transmitting the malaria virus. It's just every summer a bunch of people would die from malaria. Now, I have investigated along that road because there's this one spot where there's a lake, unofficially called Ghost Lake. And while investigating the lake and the surrounding shoreline, there's an old cave. It's known as the Lenape Indian Cave. And from what they found, the Indians didn't live there. They kind of used it as shelter for hunting. I guess some artifacts were found. And when we investigated around the lake, which is right next to the road, and the cave, we had all sorts of different types of activity happening that night. Everything from bangs happening in the wood, typical of almost Bigfoot-like activity, to hearing voices speaking in the woods. In the cave, we caught an EVP of a woman singing. Just really creepy activity. And we can't pinpoint it, at least not so far, to any one thing. So it's definitely open for more research.
You got is it the Pine Barrens in New Jersey?
Yes, in southern New Jersey, about a couple of hours south of where I live, because I'm way up north by the New York State border. But yes, up there they have the Pine Barrens down south, where the supposed Jersey Devil lives, where people have seen the Jersey Devil. I personally think it's a load of BS. There's never been a credible sighting, no credible photography. At least with Bigfoot, you can get some good pictures once in a while, or a lot of people reporting it. But the Jersey Devil just seems to be mostly legend, and not much else really going on there.
There's an area in southeast Massachusetts. I think it's known as the Hockomock Triangle or something like that. It's a swamp area, which allegedly has a hot spot for various types of phenomena, unusual animals, big birds, I think, maybe the odd Bigfoot sighting, and some UFO activity, as I recall.
And where was this located?
That's in Massachusetts. I think it's called the Bridgewater Triangle.
Yes,
that's one of the expressions used for the area.
Yes, the Bridgewater Triangle. I'm very familiar with. I know a couple of researchers up there in that location that have investigated the area, and it's like a miniature Devil's Triangle, Bermuda Triangle, in terms of the types of activity that's been reported up there.
Yeah.
Yes, most definitely. So, even out in Nevada, outside of Las Vegas, when you start getting out towards Area 51, there's what they call the extraterrestrial highway, which runs parallel to Area 51, and people have claimed they've seen a lot of UFOs and strange craft up in that area as well.
Yeah. What's your feeling about that? I mean, the one view is that the things that are seen may be made by us, as it were, and there are two strands to that. One idea is that they're made by us, but based on extraterrestrial technology. The other thing, I suppose, is that they've just been made by us, secret projects with black budget funding. Do you have any particular view on that?
I'm fascinated with the entire UFO culture, and I just think that there's a big possibility that a lot of these craft are man-made, that they exist. They're either back-engineered or however it is that they're able to do this craft, and of course it's kept quiet from the public, which, it's really convenient when they go, oh, well, there is no, there are no UFOs. We don't believe in UFOs, while they secretly have their own high-tech UFO-inspired projects in the background. I mean, even the Nazis had a special Bell craft that they were experimenting with that had anti-gravitational properties before the war moved in and prevented them from moving forward with it. So, I think a lot of it is... A lot of the craft, back in the 1980s, there was the famous Hudson Valley UFO sightings, which was along the New York State border, New York and New Jersey border, going up into eastern New York. And there's a lot of speculation that those craft were these type of man-made, back engineered craft.
Yes, I'm aware of those sightings. Yes.
Yeah, so it's hard to say. I mean, with whatever's happening in this country, there seems to be a lot of back-engineered craft. We also get a lot of really strange craft that is just almost beyond our comprehension. Craft that shapeshifts while you're watching it, and those I highly doubt are man-made.
Yes.
Are you interested in UFOs then, Peter?
Oh, yes. In fact, my book is subtitled Phantom Figures, UFOs and Missing Time. So there's a UFO component to it. And my first book was called Zones of Strangeness, Examination of Paranormal and UFO Hotspots. So, yes, I'm interested in it, yes. In fact, I think the two subjects aren't really very clearly distinguished. They overlap because there seems to be a very significant paranormal aspect to the UFO subject. Some of these sightings might be generated by very physical things, but others seem to have an apparitional character and often overlap with other strange experiences. Same is true of the Bigfoot phenomenon. There's an overlap between UFOs and Bigfoot. And I think I would advise researchers, if you're dealing with, say, a UFO case or a haunting, a traditional sort of haunting, to ask the recipients, the people you're interviewing, have you had any other experiences of an odd nature, not necessarily of this type? Because you may find that they're actually, as well as having ghostly phenomena in the house, they're actually seeing lights in the sky and things like that. And they may feel it's inappropriate to mention that unless they're explicitly asked about that.
I've done many investigations, and that is one question I do ask them. And you'll be surprised how many people that are reporting hauntings to me. As soon as you bring up the UFO, oh yeah, I saw something in the sky. Yeah, they're getting it.
Yes,
there is. It is like UFOs above, ghosts below. It's Yeah, there is a connection, definitely a connection. And, I don't know whether one triggers off, one phenomenon triggers off another or what, or whether they're tied in but somehow there's a connection. And it'll be interesting to find out.
I think this connection is very important, really, in trying to work out what's going on.
Yeah.
The one idea I've kicked around, I mean, I can't say it's true, but it makes a certain amount of sense, is that these phenomena are orchestrated. They're theatrical displays. They're orchestrated by some sort of higher intelligence. And they're transitory. That's the other thing I wonder, I suspect. In other words, when a person has a UFO experience and the UFOs fly off, the UFOs don't necessarily go anywhere. They don't go to another dimension or pass through space to a waiting mothership. They may just cease to exist at that point. A bit like stage props in a theatrical performance. They're only they're creations of the moment to fulfill some purpose. They're transitory entities and maybe don't have any enduring existence. And I think that makes sense when you've got these confusing sort of overlap cases where you've got ghosts, you've got UFOs, maybe you've got Bigfoot. It's hard to believe they're all separate, different entities belonging to different realms. And so, as I say, I wonder whether these could be theatrical performances staged for for some purpose.
Maybe. maybe one day we'll find out.
There was an interesting case reported by an American investigator called Stan Gordon from Pennsylvania. He's written a book called Silent Invasion. I think it's the UFO Bigfoot Handbook, something like that. And there's a case in there, there's several fascinating cases, well, lots of fascinating cases, but a particularly fascinating one from southwestern Pennsylvania, Fayette County, outside a place called Uniontown. A UFO was seen, a spherical object was seen by multiple witnesses. And one of the witnesses went with two boys to a field on his father's farm, and they saw what seemed to be a landed craft, a very large craft. It seemed of a different shape to the thing that was seen in the sky, but if it was the same object, it presumably shape-shifted to some degree. But there was a whirring sound coming from it. And then they saw a couple of creatures coming towards them that at first they thought were bears, but they were basically, in description, Bigfoot-type creatures. And this man, referred to pseudonymously as Steve in the account, he fired a couple of tracer shots over them. And I think the larger creature reached up as if to grab the projectile, the second projectile. At that point, I think it was, or thereabouts, the UFO just vanished, but leaving just a glow. This man, Steve, for some reason, fired some live shots at the creatures, which would then turned back and retreated to some woodland, but neither of them seemed to be hurt. And then later that evening, investigators had arrived on the scene, including the author of the book I mentioned, Stan Gordon, and there were further odd incidents. So it was an interesting case, multiple witnesses, phenomena straddling different categories. And it's, as I say, not the only case in the book.
Mark.
Yes.
Have we interviewed Stan Gordon?
Yes, we interviewed Stan.
I thought so.
A couple of years back. I believe it was on the old Unknown Origins radio show. But yes, I've met Stan. I know him and the work he does throughout Pennsylvania. And he's a really interesting investigator who's worked on a lot of cases.
That's right. That's the impression I have. He was associated with the investigation of the Kecksburg UFO incident. Do you remember that case where an object landed in woods near Kecksburg? I think it was in Pennsylvania. And the area was cordoned off, I think, by the military, and the public weren't allowed to go down. And I think this object was taken away under a tarpaulin on a flatbed truck. And one can speculate what it was. Was it a crashed Soviet satellite or something, or was it something exotic? I don't think anyone knows for sure, but it was certainly a story that's made its mark in the literature.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that case, and what's interesting about it is that the description of the UFO is actually eerily similar to the Nazi German craft that was being built back in the 40s. That
Die Glocke, or
say that again?
The bell.
The bell. They describe the Kecksburg UFO as like an acorn shape, but it's still very similar to the Bell craft that was being tested by the Germans in Poland during the end of World War II. There may or may not be a connection between the two, but it's still a very interesting case. And of course, most people in America and around the world, when they think of crashed UFOs, they immediately think of Roswell. But there are so many other crashes, and most people aren't aware of the Kecksburg incident. And yet that one's more recent, and there were a lot more eyewitnesses. People who actually went up and saw the craft before the military came in and cordoned it off.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Yes.
Fascinating. So, have you seen any UFOs yourself over here in the UK?
No, I wouldn't. I don't think I have. No. Not that I'm aware of. I mean, it's possible I've seen lights in the sky and didn't think anything of them, thinking they were something normal, but they weren't. But I haven't had any UFO personally, any UFO experiences. No.
So you've not had missing time or anything yourself?
Well, as far as the paranormal generally is concerned, I have had some experiences that were possibly paranormal.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but I can't be sure. The one that comes to mind is I was on holiday in the States in 2015, and I spent I think it was 2 nights in a hotel in Salt Lake City in Utah, and on the second night, the last night. About 1 o'clock in the morning, I wish I'd actually made notes about this at the time, there was very heavy tramping sound from the ceiling above me. And it sounded, I mean, at that time of night, it seemed unlikely that any kind of renovation or repair work would be going on. It was almost as if someone with lead boots was pacing up and down in a state of extreme agitation, or running up and down. Or perhaps someone perversely was trying to make a nuisance, or having some kind of mental breakdown. But the other thought that did occur to me, of course, is that it does sound a bit haunt-like in the terms of haunt phenomena. You reports of people hearing footsteps coming from a room above. Maybe if they go and check the room, they'll find there's nothing up there. Or they might even hear furniture being dragged about, although I didn't hear that. But this went on for about best part of an hour, I'd say. And it was disturbing, but whether it had a normal explanation or not, I can't say.
Very interesting. Now, we've talked before about, I've really never seen a UFO before until very recently. And just briefly, a couple of months ago, I saw a string of red lights moving across North Jersey that I can't explain. And the first thing I do when I see something I don't understand is I look for that logical explanation. I tried everything I could to figure out what I was watching. Were they drones? Were they ultralight craft? Were they lanterns? And everything that I tried throwing at it wasn't sticking because of the way they were moving. They were silent. They were moving faster because there was no wind that night. And I even talked to pilots, experienced pilots who they had no idea what it could have been either. So it's a mystery. Am I going to sit there and say they're UFOs as in, extraterrestrial craft? Absolutely not. They're lights in the sky. They weren't moving too fast, doing any kind of strange maneuvers, but I still don't know what they are. So it's the classic definition of a UFO. But that's all I've ever really seen in the sky. Yet I know people, my brother too, who used to see him all the time. He'd see him and I'd never see him.
That was quite exciting when Mark told me that, because it was nice for him to be able to see something at last. Because he was always saying to me, I've never seen anything. And then he saw something, which was great. But getting back to the roads, I've just been reading on this piece. Where is it? Sorry about that. I just pushed mute by mistake. I've just been reading about one on this PC of mine, the Electric Bray in Scotland, which is a road where it says the road attracts a lot of visitors who want to witness the unusual phenomena of a car rolling up a hill. The name of the hill comes from the belief that vehicles were influenced by magnets or electric forces in the environment, causing the odd happening. Now, isn't there a road or a bridge or something, or a crossing across a railway station somewhere in America where the cars are pushed across by what they think is phantom children that were killed on that crossing by a train at some point? Can you remember that? Do you know that story, Mark?
You know what? I've heard that story in several places around the country. And quite frankly, I believe that in almost every case, they have proven it to be an optical illusion, that the cars look like they're rolling uphill, but if you put a level down, it's an illusion. The car is actually driving downhill. So, I don't.
That's my understanding about the Electric Bray, and I think it's.
Oh, you know that one. You know it, do you?
Yes. Yeah, I know of the case. I think I may have been on the road, but I don't know that I saw anything that looked like that. But I think I know roughly where it is, yes. But I think that's the explanation, the one that Mark's mentioned. I think it's regarded as having a prosaic explanation.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking at this site, and there's quite a few in Scotland, isn't there? Roads that have paranormal connections to them.
Peter, you there?
Yes?
Okay.
Yeah, it's really... Oh, there's one in South London, where I'm from as well. Absolutely amazing. So how did you find... You'd obviously done research to find out about all these roads, Peter. How many did you manage to get? Did you get quite a lot, or was there so many that you couldn't put them all in the book?
Well, the book's basically a selection of cases. I mean, I think I could have put others in, but I knew about some of them. I had known for some time. For instance, I'd looked into an area near Inverness called the area near Loch Ashy, southwest of Inverness, and that has a history or reputation for ghostly phenomena going back some years. Of people seeing phantom warriors and as some sort of battle that could be construed as some sort of replay from the past, although there's no historical record of a major battle having been fought actually at that very site. But I was also aware, for instance, of that the area had also been the setting for sightings of a phantom car. And I mentioned the case in I think it was a magazine article some time ago, and a correspondent from Inverness told me about an experience of his own where he believed he'd seen a phantom vehicle there. So I got to hear about that. And another person, I think, responding to perhaps that same article, I can't remember, told me of a ghostly experience he and a climbing companion had on the Isle of Skye.
Yeah.
They were driving along. They came to a hump in the road. I think it was a single-track road they were on, and they pulled over to the side because this car was approaching, and then it was temporarily, it was obscured by the hump in the road, but it never reappeared, and there seemed to be nowhere it could have gone. Through this man, I was actually in touch with a woman called Mrs. Kirkwood, I think it was, who years previously with her husband and another person had a phantom vehicle experience in the Highlands. Driving along, they saw a vehicle, two of them, not all three of actually saw this. The husband didn't notice this, but the driver and the woman did. They saw the lights of a vehicle coming towards them, and they pulled aside to let it pass, but it didn't reappear round a bend. And then when they continued, there was nothing, just a clear road, and nowhere it could apparently have gone. So that's how some of the cases came to me, where I was able to get personal testimony. In other cases, I've drawn on other people. For instance, with Horsall Moss, I haven't actually been in touch with any witnesses myself, but a man called Rob Gandy, a professor at a local university in the Liverpool area, has collected some cases from there, and so I've drawn on Rob Gandy's work in referring to Horsall Moss.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
With regard to Bluebell Hill, I've been in touch with Sean Tudor, whom I mentioned, whom I regard as a sort of expert on the case of Bluebell Hill. There are cases on record from Bluebell Hill, but as I say, he's actually assembled quite a large collection of cases from that area.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the most famous places, isn't it? Bluebell Hill.
Yes.
I think just about everybody's heard of Bluebell Hill.
One of the problems with this area, of course, is that it's actually hard to know whether places are really hotspots, because once a place gets known, if another case occurs there, it's perhaps more likely to be reported. Whereas if you've got another area and there hasn't been much reporting, incidents might go unreported. Particularly if people fear derision or that sort of thing. But once someone else has made a report, it's perhaps a little easier for someone else to come up and say, well, actually, as a matter of fact, I had a strange experience there myself. If we had actually accurate statistical information right across the country, we could say with more authority, yes, this place is definitely a hotspot.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a funny one. I don't know whether I've told you this or whether you've heard me talk about it, but it happened in Corfu. Corfu over 30 years ago on the island of Corfu. We hired a Jeep. Well, there was a couple of Jeeps, actually. We hired a couple of Jeeps because there was quite a few of us. My sister, her husband, my mother, me and my husband. So we had 2 Jeeps, and we were driving up a mountain, or what was to me was a mountain. It was very high anyway. And the road goes round and round the mountain as it goes up.
Yes.
Okay. So we're driving up. We're driving through all these little villages and towns, and people are shouting and waving at us, and they're coming out of their houses and they're screaming and shouting and waving, and we thought they were just being friendly, so we're waving back, hiya, and all this sort of thing. Anyway, we get to the top of this mountain, or what we think it. Well, we thought it. We get to a certain stage up this mountain, right? And it was very low clouds, so you couldn't see the road anymore because you were kind of in the clouds. Do you understand?
Yes.
Cloud, yeah. So, and all of a sudden, out of this cloud, walking up the side of this mountain and up onto the road, came a little man in Lederhosen. He was wearing Lederhosen. Right. And he put his finger up at us as if to say, no, no, no. Right? So he carried on. He walked across the road and carried on up the side of the mountain, or what was left of the mountain. And we're all standing up in these Jeeps, open top Jeeps, going, and we're all yodeling at him. Right. yeah, we're all yodeling at him and everything. Anyway, my husband gets out of the Jeep and he walks along the road, what's left of the road, a little, which isn't very far, it's about 20 yards. And then he comes back and he said, we're not going any further, we've got to turn these Jeeps around. So it turned out it was a dead end, and if we'd carried on, we would have gone off the side of the mountain. There was no road there. Another 20 yards, and there was no road.
So do you think
we couldn't see it because it was like a fog up there with all that cloud?
Yes.
Yeah, we've got no idea who he was, where he came from, or where he went to, but he was wearing Lederhosen in the middle of Corfu, a Greek island.
Right. What's your guess? Do you think he was a real person or a warning apparition? Or a
warning apparition, obviously, but at the time we thought he was a real person. That's why we were all taking the mickey out of him, being stupid young people. Or I was standing yodeling at him. It was so... And obviously the people going on the way up the mountain, the people that were coming out of the villages and one thing or another and yelling at us were trying to warn us not to go any further. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
And we're thinking they're being friendly.
Yes. Gosh.
Well, I've had quite a few, actually. I've had experiences on tracks on the hillsides, walking along old rough tracks. I've had quite a few. I don't know where they all come from, but I do get them.
Yes. There have been reports of people... I'm thinking of the sort of guardian angel effect that that apparition was to warn you. There's a short chapter in my book about phantom black dogs, and I've mentioned a couple of incidents where these dogs have appeared, and they seem to have exercised a protective effect. There was one report of it's very brief. I've mentioned just in passing of a woman who was walking through some woodland in, I think it was Manningtree, Essex. Yeah. And there were some vagrants who were perhaps giving her unwelcome attention, but a black dog followed her, and that seemed to put them off. And another case where a woman was walking along and she heard some Irish labourers say what they would have done to her if the big dog hadn't been with her. And there was this very large dog that had appeared, and it presumably protected her from whatever they were talking about, which was, I imagine, was sexual assault. But it's interesting, the idea that these phenomena can be protective. I suppose one possibility is that they're created by our own minds. If people have unconscious ability to, gain information through extrasensory perception, and affect the environment, it may be that the person has unconsciously picked up that they're in danger, and that somehow they're able to manufacture this apparition.
Yeah,
for
like
protective purposes.
on a scale like a tulpa,
Yeah.
where they can actually bring tulpa is like
Yes.
an apparition is that comes from the imagination. So
Yes.
yeah, so they're unconsciously doing it,
Or it's being produced by an external intelligence. I don't know which, but yes.
But we've got shucks. What you call I call shucks because that's one I can remember. They come under all different names. These black dogs in this country,
right.
don't they? But they're often seen by crossroads.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why, but crossroads and churchyards.
That's right.
Mm.
There is a theory or a notion that's kicked around. It's slightly mystical, and I'm not sure that I personally buy into it very much. But the idea that boundaries, maybe parish boundaries, or the boundary between the gate of a church, and boundaries are somehow conducive to strange phenomena. The problem with this is it's almost like turning a description into an explanation. If you say, for instance, the black dog appeared on the parish boundary, why did it appear? Because it was a boundary. It's just slightly circular, and I'm not sure whether it's valid. The one case that does come to mind where you can bring in the sort of boundary area is Borley Rectory in Essex.
Oh, yeah.
You probably know this case. It was a sort of allegedly haunted and quite a complicated story, various residents and this sort of thing. That's right. But it's actually, Borley Rectory was located at its nearest point, probably about half a mile from the Suffolk border. Although it's Borley is in Essex, it's very close to the border. But then I can think of other famous cases where, the thing wasn't obviously on the border of a county or maybe perhaps not even on a parish boundary. So it's easy to pluck out these things, I suppose, if you want to sort of buttress a case. But unless you do a proper statistical analysis and randomly select the cases and then look at the characteristics, it's perhaps hard to say.
Yeah. But it is interesting.
Have you had any personal experiences, given that you've had quite a lot of experiences generally, with big cats? You've been driving along or walking along and you've encountered what looks like a...
No, apparently there was a big cat in Carmarthen a few years ago, which was witnessed by a police officer.
Uh-huh.
And because it was in Carmarthen and because I've got a lot of dogs, I was very cautious about letting the dogs out in the garden at night time because I was a bit worried about that. And a friend of ours actually near Swansea had a pig farm, and he watched one of his big full-grown boars. No, they're big, aren't they? A boar, a big pig. It's a big pig actually being pulled over a wall by something. Right. Literally, it was screaming. And it was being pulled up the wall and over a wall by something. And they could only think that it was a big cat.
Was the boar injured or?
It was, yeah. Yeah, it was killed.
It was killed,
yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
So, and of course you've got all the big cat stories down in Dartmoor and places like that, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Pretty famous there, big cats there, Mark.
Well, we have mountain lions out here, cougars. They're here in my area too, which I'll tell you, I'm more nervous running into a mountain lion than I am a bear.
Yeah, but they live out there naturally, don't they? It's not a natural thing for them to live here. Back in the 60s, people used to keep them as pets. They used to keep exotic pets, but then they brought in a licensing fee for these exotic pets, and a lot of people just didn't want to pay it, so they let them out into the wild, monkeys and things like that, let them out into the wild. But, for them to be breeding, I think if they were breeding, we'd be seeing a lot more of them.
I think so. This idea that you were referring to the 1976 Dangerous Wild Animals Act, and it said that rather than pay the license. I don't know whether it's actually true that a lot of people release them, or whether that's just an explanation that people have put forward. But the problem is that even if that's true, it's not a full explanation, because there were quite a few reports before then. So you either have to posit that there's a resident population have been in these islands, and I'm referring to the British Isles, for a long time, or these things have been escaped from captivity, or even been released for some reason before that act came in. It's strange.
A lot of big stately homes had their own wildlife parks, didn't they?
Yes.
You know, it was the in thing at the time to have your own animals there, and I suppose a lot of them could have escaped from there, because a lot of wild boar did.
I had an encounter with a wolf during that holiday I mentioned in 2015 in the States. The coach I was in called into a car park at a Walmart in Idaho Falls, and we were just going to get some provisions. And the driver recognized a vehicle as being that of a friend. And sure enough, the friend was there with his 10-year-old pet wolf, male wolf, Silver. I think he was 10 years old. But he'd had it since it was a cub. And it was, I just patted it and it was fine. It didn't react badly. He said, actually, you should have let it sniff your hand. It would be better. But it didn't show any aggression. And I think it had lived with this man nearly all its life. But in this country, you wouldn't be. I don't think you'd be allowed to do that, would you?
No, you wouldn't be allowed to. No.
No.
I think they'd have 3 fits. A lot of their dogs are on the dangerous dogs list. What are they going to do if you have a wolf?
There was a man near here years ago had a pet grizzly bear. He'd acquired it from a wildlife place when it was a cub. And I think he paid £50 for it, and it was called Hercules. And this man called Andy Robin, he used to be a wrestler, and he used to wrestle with the bear, and the bear lived with him and his wife, and it can be seen on video or through YouTube. And very nice creature, friendly, used to eat human-type food, liked a glass of beer, I don't think people would have been at risk from that, and. But again, I'm not sure how easy it would be to own a creature like that now. Whether the regulations are really tight and you need a licensing and so on. But maybe that applied in Andy's case, but as well.
Yeah. How did we get on this subject from Shucks?
we were talking about big cats.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah, we were. But I don't think the big cats that have been seen you can't say, can you? But I don't think really that the big cats that have been seen in this country are paranormal. Maybe one's on Dartmoor, but this one down here in Carmarthen, I'm sure, must have escaped from somewhere. Yeah. Because
the one type of cryptic cat that they talk about here in the U.S. is the black panthers, which not really supposed to exist, and yet people have mentioned seeing them, and I actually saw 2 of them once when I was a kid back way back many years ago, when my family went to Death Valley, and we saw a couple up on a canyon wall. We watched them for about 20 minutes, and I've never seen one before, and you never hear about them, but yet they do exist. Now, do I think it's cryptid? No, not really. I think it's an undiscovered branch of a cougar, just different coloring. I don't know about the cats in the UK, but I don't really think it's probably paranormal related.
Most of our cats just go meow.
Most of these big cats, I think there's been a change now, but nowadays most of these things are described as black. And as you said, Mark, a problem about this is that black, not the melanistic, as they're called, black big cats are rare, normally considered to be rare. For instance, leopards aren't normally black. So it's strange that so many of these things are black. Now, to some extent, it could be explained by poor lighting conditions. And if people have heard of black panthers and so on, and they see something, is illuminated, they might infer it's a black panther. Or indeed, it might be impressed in our folklore, as it were. Therefore, people are inclined to think of the thing as a black panther, even if they haven't really had a really good look at it. But if they are seeing something strange and it's black, it does raise the possibility, I suppose, that it could be an apparitional entity rather than a normal flesh and blood creature.
Oh, can I get back onto roads again, Peter? I've just thought of something.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever heard, or did anyone ever report to you anything about they were maybe driving along a motorway and somebody running up beside the car and keeping up with the car? Like a person?
I'm aware of cases from the States of that with so-called skinwalker.
Yes.
Type,
I was just going to say that. Skinwalker cases talk about that type of activity.
Yeah?
Yes.
I have heard of it over here, but cases over here, but that was a long time ago. I couldn't tell you what roads they were on. It's just that I'd heard, and that's where I got it from, that, like these phantom running people or things, and they actually keep up with the car.
That's right.
And they run beside the car, and the car could be going at such a speed, and these things are these people or whatever they are keeping up with it.
Yes, I'm not aware. I mean, you may be right, of course. I'm not disputing that. But as I say, I'm aware of reports from the United States, but I'm not aware of British cases. But that'd be interesting. There are some like that. Yes.
Yeah. If anybody knows, get in touch with us, and we'll put you in touch with Peter, and you can tell him your stories, especially on this runner. I call it the runner, but, and it's usually on motorways and places like that where a car can pick up speed. They come out of nowhere and all of a sudden they're there beside the car, running along beside the car.
Yeah.
And that in itself is creepy as hell.
It is. And it's something I always think about every time I'm going to London on the M4. Because there is no way do I want one of them running beside a car.
If I were to look up and see somebody running alongside my car at 50 miles an hour, it's got to be either Steve Austin, the $6 Million Man, or it's going to be a Target because I'm going to hit that thing.
Yeah. I've seen motorbikes on the M4 just disappear from nowhere. Just disappear. I've heard them coming up, and then I've seen them, and then they've just gone. Motorcycles.
I've occasionally had the experience of driving along and seeing someone in my rearview mirror, maybe someone a bit close, and then feeling a little concerned about it, and then suddenly I look and there's nothing there. But I can't say for sure that there's anything truly mysterious. It may be there was a turn-off that I didn't notice, and I wasn't monitoring it continuously, and therefore it may well have just been a normal event. But I think the figure running along beside your car at 50 miles an hour would be particularly disconcerting.
It's pretty frightening, isn't it?
Tell me something, going back to your experience with the man who got into the car going to Bristol Airport. Did it leave you traumatized or disturbed when you thought about it afterwards, or just puzzled?
Yeah. For over a week, we talked about it. I couldn't get it out of my head. My husband went back to London the following day because he works up there during the week and comes home at the weekends. And I was talking every night I was talking to him on the phone about it. Did you see this? Did you hear him say that? Did you, Because I just couldn't get it out of my head. It was so, and I kept talking to Mark about him as well.
Are you aware of any other reports from that area of the same thing happening?
No, I did look. I Googled, but I couldn't find anything.
Right.
But then again, I might not have been putting the right keywords in.
Yes.
But, it did bother me. It did bother me, and it still does. The man on the mountain in Corfu didn't bother me because it took years for me to realise that maybe there was, he wasn't a real man. I didn't really take much notice of it. We just thought it was strange. We thought it was funny, and we took the mickey out of him. But then we were quite shocked that, if he hadn't appeared and he hadn't wagged his finger at us, we would have gone over the side or down the side of the mountain. But you don't think about that when you're young, do you? It's only, I only started thinking about him after the experience with the Bristol man.
Right.
And a few others that I've had over the years, because of this case with the Bristol man, has brought to recalled my memory on many other occasions where I've had these experiences.
Have you ever had an experience before when an apparently paranormal event has protected you from danger?
A paranormal, but besides the man on the mountain?
In the Corfu case, if this was an apparition, its appearance could be seen as warning you not to drive, fall to your death, as it were. Have you had any other experiences where you had a bizarre experience and it served a sort of protective function?
Well, I was on the South Downs. You know the South Downs? Have you heard of the South Downs? Right. I was up on the South Downs when I was a young girl. Me and my friend, we were always skiving school, and we would go up onto the South Downs so nobody would see us and say, get back into school, because our school was at the foot of the South Downs. Anyway, we'd go up on the South Downs, and we were walking along this old rocky track, dug out on the side of the hill. So it was like a hill, and then there's a track, and then the hill again. Do you understand?
Yes.
It's a bit hard for me to explain. And we're trotting along there, we're walking along there and everything, and all of a sudden this man, I did write about this in one of my books, but I didn't write this part. This man appeared in front of us, and he had on a vest and a pair of socks. That's all he had on. And we were only young girls, about 12 years old. And
so he was walking around with his willy hanging out.
Yes, he was a flasher.
Yes.
Yeah, he was a flasher, and I'd never seen anything like that before in my life. Anyway, so we ran back along the track the way we'd come, and as we were running along, there was this little old lady with a walking stick. Now, if she was 80 or 90, she's got to have been about 80 or 90 if a day, She was that old. Little dumpy woman, old-fashioned clothes, and she had this walking stick. And she's hobbling along this stony track, because it was a stony track up on the hillside. And she's hobbling along, and I ran up to her. My friend ran past her, and I ran up to her. And I said, lady, don't go down there. Don't go down there, because there's a man. And I told her that he didn't have his clothes on. And she turned around and she said to me, dear, never be tempted. That's all she said. And I looked at her, and she just carried on walking the way she was going, towards the old man, towards the man with no trousers. So I ran past her, and I ran on to catch my friend up, and she said, what'd you stop for? I said, I was telling the old lady not to go down there, but she's still walking that way. She said, there's no old lady. I can't see any old lady. Where's the old lady she's going?
Gosh.
So who was that?
Don't be tempted. Well, that advice went right out the window, didn't it?
Yeah.
Hey, you cheeky devils.
I'll tell you a bizarre experience I had. It wasn't a paranormal experience, but it was a bizarre one. I was working as a psychologist, a clinical psychologist, and I had a patient who was suffering from agoraphobia. And, she would get a bit nervous and anxious if she was out in a public place, such as a store or something like that. And I took her across from the clinic where I was working to a local branch of Asda. And in the foyer, she wasn't severely agoraphobic, I should emphasize. And I said to her in the foyer, I said, I'd like you to go into the store, get one or two things. And I'd like you to meet me here by the magazines in 5 minutes or something like that. So she went into the store, and I did. And I came out and I saw this woman by the magazines, and I thought to myself, is that my patient? It looked about the right age, and I thought, it must be. I convinced myself I must be worrying unnecessarily. So I went across to this woman, and I said, how's it going? And she said, okay. I said, right, I'd like you to go down to the end of the precinct. I'd like you to wander around in John Menzies, that was a shop at the end, for about 5 minutes, and then report back to me here. So she went off, and then she returned actually about 2 minutes later to say that John Menzies was closed. And then the real patient came out of Asda. And so I had two women in front of me. And I realized, of course, I'd made this terrible mistake. And I couldn't explain, obviously. I couldn't say to this stranger, I'm sorry, I've mistaken you for this agoraphobic patient. So I just said, I'm sorry, so mistaken identity, smiled sheepishly. And she went away. But it was extraordinary that she'd actually carried out my orders because they made no sense, in context.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if I
anyone would think she'd turn around and say, what are you talking about? You want to go to Menzies? Go to Menzies yourself. Oh.
Exactly. Well, the other thing about it was a potentially dangerous situation. I mean, if she'd had a nasty, jealous husband, a boyfriend lurking around, he might have been acted aggressively. Alternatively, if she'd been alarmed by this, she could have got the police or something and said, look, this man is harassing me. But the degree of compliance was incredible. I mean, I don't know whether it was because I was wearing a suit and I was in a sort of place where not many people would wear a suit and that kind of thing. And because it kind of created an air of authority, and she just went into some sort of state where she felt she had to follow rules. But she didn't look distressed. That was the other thing. She looked quite happy about it all.
I bet you, though, when she got home, she was saying to herself, what the hell did I go to Menzies for? Why did I do what he said?
That's right.
Yeah. I know I would be. Yeah. I'll tell you another one. My mother's house, my mother lived in an old railway cottage. And where she lived is a built-up area now with a park opposite it. But when the cottages were built in the 1800s, when they first built the railway through there to London, it was all fields and everything. Well, now I'm coming across the park towards my mother's house. I'm about 50 yards from my mother's house. And an old lady, again with a walking stick, but she was dressed in Victorian clothes, heavy material, like curtain material, very heavy. I can't remember what it's called. And she was walking towards me, and I was pushing my son's pushchair, and he was at that stage where he was say hello to everybody, And I said to Billy, I said, no, don't say hello to that lady. And we carried on walking. And as I went past her, she looked at me and said, it's a nice day. And I said, yes, it is. And I carried on walking. We passed each other. I'd gone about 3 steps, turned around to look, and she was gone. And there was no way she could get out of that park unless she was a sprinter. Because all along the bottom of the park where I was and all round that park, it was iron railings. And I went indoors. Mum said to me, what's the matter with you? I said, I've just seen a ghost. It clicked as soon as I turned around that she was, obviously a ghost. She wasn't really there. And that's why Billy never said hello. He didn't say hello to her. And yet he said hello to everybody. Yeah. Anyway, and she could have only been at one time, if she was a human spirit or whatever, she must have lived in the railway cottage at some point or other at one time.
I must admit, I'm a little bit skeptical of about the idea that ghosts are spirits. I mean, there are several reasons for this, but one of them is that
you're on the same line as me and Mark. We don't. Yeah.
No, that's right. I mean, one reason I'm skeptical about it is that apparitions of vehicles and other inanimate objects, they're not, apparitions aren't all living creatures. So that makes me a bit skeptical. Another reason is that if you take a road, the A75 and B71, those roads I mentioned in southern Scotland, and as I said, there are various reports of apparitions from there, but they're not all the same apparition. In some cases, it's a male figure. In others, it's a female figure, or even maybe some. So, the idea that they're earthbound spirits, that somehow become stuck there, it's a bit hard to believe, because why would so many different spirits be stuck in that sort of along those bits of road? That makes me doubtful. Another thing is that there are cases of so-called haunting where there have been more than one type of apparition has been seen in the property. Which again, if you ascribe the apparitions to individual spirits, you'd have to say, well, how have multiple spirits become earthbound at the same location? There was, for instance, a haunting at the mill house at Willington Quay in the northeast of England. This was years ago. Yeah. And the reports of the apparitions, there were several types of figures seen, including a monkey. Actually, there was one experience where there seemed to be an apparitional monkey, and different types of apparition. So it makes me a little question this theory of the spirit theory. I can't say that none of these cases are explicable in those terms, but I'm not sure that that's the right explanation.
Well, Mark,
that's me.
Are you, Mark? We've often thought the same way, haven't we? That these are not human spirits.
No, because one of the things we've started changing I know especially me changing my opinion on over the years is that people who claim to see an apparition and think, oh, it's a ghost and somebody died, or especially if they're in a period clothing, and yet, and not saying that it doesn't happen. I think it does, but I also think that a percentage of what people think they're seeing as a ghost can turn out to be more in line with the type of time slip phenomenon where two time periods briefly overlap.
Which I've had many.
Yes. And you can see a person from a past experience going about their everyday routine. And occasionally and again, you've had this too, occasionally those people can see you just like you can see them, and they look just as shocked as you are. And so I think in those cases what we're dealing with is two very much alive human beings who just happen to see each other through a brief span of time.
Yeah.
That has happened. I saw that once, and she saw me as well.
But she seemed to be of a different time period.
Yeah, she was. She was like from the 1930s.
Oh, sorry, this is the woman you just mentioned.
I was in an old house, and my son took us up to the servants' quarters. The house was empty. He was living in there. But there was nobody else living in the house. And he took us up to the servant quarters right at the very top. And we were looking in there. There was an old blanket box thing fixed to the floor, a wooden box. It was actually fixed to the floor. It was quite a fascinating area to look around in the servant quarters. And as I walked out the door, there she was standing there. And she looked at me, I looked at her. And I knew that she was, in that instant, I knew that she was the, what's the main housekeeper? The housekeeper of the house.
Yes.
She was like dressed in 1930s clothes. And another time, even in this house, when I was buying this house, but in that, going back to that one again, she looked as shocked to see me as I was to see her. Yes. And this house, when we first bought this house and it was empty, I went for a walk round upstairs, and as I walked into the main bedroom, the master bedroom, there was a woman standing in Edwardian clothes at the window.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's happened quite a lot.
What happened to her? Did she just vanish, or?
Well, she was, when I first walked, I stood by the door. I didn't go into the bedroom. I stood by the door at the threshold.
Yes.
Because I saw her over at the window. It was a massive, great big bay window. And I saw her standing there as if she was looking out the window, waiting for somebody. And she turned, kind of looked at me, and then just vanished, just disappeared in front of my eyes. And, of course, I came downstairs. I didn't say anything to anybody. And on the way back to London, I said, my husband turned around and said, well, how many is in there? I said, three. He said, because he knew jolly well that I'd seen her. Yeah, that I'd seen something. And that was his words, how many's in there? I said, 3. He said, well, are we buying it? I said, yeah. So we bought it.
Do you get many dream experiences, precognitive dreams, dreams that seem to relate to the future? Or
No. Well, we often talk about the dreams we have, don't we, Mark?
Yeah. Had very unusual ones over the years. Some precognitive. I mean, I had a dream about 9/11 2 days before it happened. But it was also highly symbolic, and I had forgotten about it. In fact, I didn't even make the connection until the day after 9/11. So it wasn't like I saw it happening and go, oh, yeah, that's what happened. It took me a while to remember it, and when I did, I could see the symbolism in the dream for what it was. So, yeah, occasionally we'll have those.
And I sometimes see terrorist bombs going off and details of that. My father used to see disasters all the time. What he used to have disaster dreams. But Mark and I often talk about them, and if anything happens to me, whether I see anything, I will report it to Mark. Mark can make a note of it.
Yeah.
We'll try to work out what city it's going to be in, and usually we're pretty good, aren't we, Mark, at this?
We get some clues to try to figure it out.
Yeah, we picked up Paris quite a lot, didn't we? And, the attacks in Paris and things like that. But, yeah, I'm a very strange one, Peter, I'm afraid.
How often do you have these sort of paranormal experiences, would you say? Do you go for months without anything and then you have one, or are you having them every week? Or?
Well, something strange happens every week. Practically every day, but the terrorist stuff and things like that, no, it's not every week, is it, Mark? I can go a month or 2 months or whatever.
We usually go a few months in between something happening that makes us say, yeah, we need to talk about this.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen very, very often. And I know for me, my experiences are very few and far between. I mean, I think I can count them all on one hand. Something that was precognitive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my father used to see aeroplane crashes about 2 weeks before it had happened. He saw. I remember he died back in 1970s, so it's very vague. But I remember him getting up one morning and saying that he saw a small aeroplane crash, and I think they were golfers that were on it and hit the mountainside or hit something or other. And within a couple of weeks, it happened, and it was on the news.
Did he ever have these sort of experiences but nothing did come true?
No, it always came true with Dad. Always came true. Right. And, he was able to see things as well. He was a train driver, and he was driving through a tunnel called Three Bridges.
Uh-huh.
And on the old electric trains, when you go through a tunnel and you're driving a train, everything behind you, you can see it because everything's dark. You can see everything behind you because of the lights or something or other or whatever. Anyway, as he entered through the tunnel, there was a man in a shirt standing behind him. And apparently, according to Dad, it was a suicide that had jumped from the tunnel entrance. And, of course, Dad saw him standing behind him actually in the train, in the driver's carriage of the train.
Yes.
And that shook him up a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, he saw things all the time, Dad. But
I'll tell you a sort of place that you don't hear many reports about, and I imagine it'd be quite frightening in a way, haunted lavatories.
Oh, I've got one. And I've got 3 minutes. I'm going to tell you this, okay?
Right.
The lady that used to live in this house, Annie, she had a coloscopy, well, I can't pronounce the word.
Colonoscopy.
Bag.
Oh, colostomy
she had
bag,
one
yeah.
of those bag, yeah. And she was very particular about the downstairs toilet. She couldn't get up the stairs anymore, but she used the downstairs toilet. She was very particular in keeping it smelling nice. When we moved in, anyone that went in there and, put it bluntly, people, I'm sorry about this, but took a dump, especially my son, he would have a curry the night before and maybe take a dump in there. Within seconds, that downstairs toilet smelled of lavender or violets. It was beautiful. Outside the toilet in the hallway, it would stink rotten. Open the door and it would smell beautiful. This went on for about 6 months to a year. We searched that toilet for anything that would make this beautiful smell after someone took a dump in it. And we could never find nothing. We never found anything in there. It was just a little toilet downstairs. And it stopped after about 6 months. And I think that's because she realised then, maybe she realised, well, she keeps it clean. There's no need for me to do this anymore. But
Right.
the phenomenon stopped after that. But
Maybe
he had a brilliant curry one day, and he went in there, Mum, and he said, right, let's see how long it takes Annie to get rid of that one. And I walked out there, and it hit me in the hallway. Oh, my God. And I opened the door, and I called to him. I said, now, come here, Jamie, and have a look. It must have been less than 2 minutes, and it was smelling like perfume in there.
Gosh.
It was gorgeous.
It may be that we don't hear of these cases because, you know, the idea of lavatorial hauntings is regarded as a bit, you know, you can't really mention these things, you know, sort of self-censoring, as it were. But that's fascinating.
I had one at the Mermaid Inn as well. I was breaking my neck for a wee at the Mermaid Inn in Rye, and I ran into the ladies' toilet, and there was a phantom or a spectre, a woman standing there, obviously from very, very long ago, the way she was dressed and everything. And I went, I've got time for you now. And I ran into the toilet and shut the toilet door. When I came out, she was gone. But to go back down into the bar, you had to go down a couple of steps. And I'm not kidding you. When I got to that top step, something pushed me. And I landed on my face on the floor in the bar.
All right.
Mm.
Were you hurt?
No. I was embarrassed.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, it's time to wrap up here.
Oh.
We have run out of time. Peter, thank you very much for coming on the show. And tell everybody where they can find your book.
Well, the easiest way to get it is probably on Amazon, or they could get it on the History Press website. But Amazon's the one that most people would know about, amazon.co.uk. It will be available, I think, on amazon.com in May, but it's certainly available in this country on amazon.co.uk.
That book is Paranormal Encounters on Britain's Roads by Peter McCue. And Peter, again, thank you for coming on the show. This has been a lot of fun.
Not at all. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Peter.
And thank you, everybody, for listening to another edition of Paranormal UK Radio, the flagship show of the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And Irene, we will catch you next week.
Yep, okay.
Have a good night,
Whatever
everybody.
your name is.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.